Hello, everybody. Let's talk a little bit about the history of casinos and gambling. And let me start with this simple idea that usually surprises people. Now, if casinos existed simply because people like to gamble, then every state would have casinos. But they don't. People have always gambled, long before Las Vegas, long before casinos even existed, long before governments ever paid attention to it. Dice, bones, wagers on contests, bet between friends. Gambling is frankly ancient. Casinos, on the other hand, are not. Casinos exist because governments eventually figured out how to regulate risk, tax behavior, and build tourism and employment ecosystems all around gambling. That distinction is everything we're talking about this week. We're not studying games, we're studying how chaos becomes a business. Here's the framework I want you to keep in your head. Gambling is ancient and casinos are engineered. Humans don't need casinos to gamble. We all know this. Gambling happened naturally wherever people gathered. What didn't exist was a way to control it, scale it, or make it politically acceptable. A casino is what happens when three things collide: gambling, regulation, and capital, money. Wrap those inside a hospitality environment, and suddenly gambling becomes an industry instead of a side activity. That's why this course keeps emphasizing that casinos are hospitality ecosystems, not just gaming floors. And it's why history matters here, because every modern control, promotion, sportsbook rule, and loyalty program you see today grew out of these early decisions. Now let's talk about Nevada, because this is where most of the mythology starts. Nevada didn't legalize gambling in 1931 because it was progressive, visionary, or trying to build a fun destination. Nevada legalized gambling because it was broke. Now, think back then, this was the Great Depression. Unemployment is crushing the area. Tax revenue was disappearing. And at the same time, thousands of workers are arriving to build the Hoover Dam. Here's the critical part most people miss: illegal gambling was already happening. So Nevada didn't invent gambling, it made a decision to regulate it, license it, and tax it. Legalization didn't introduce risk, it controlled risk. That theme repeats throughout the casino history. Regulation isn't about killing gambling, it's about making it manageable, observable, and profitable. The same logic is why sportsbooks operate the way they do today. Early Las Vegas was not glamorous at all. It wasn't chandeliers, fountains. It was saloons, back rooms, makeshift gaming spaces, and people who knew how to run games, but not necessarily businesses. There were no standardized procedures, there were very weak controls, no real guest protections, heavy reliance on personalities. From an operations standpoint, it was chaos. But here's something important to understand as future hospitality leaders: innovation often sneaks through that chaos. And some of the most important ideas in modern casino operations came from this messy early period. Enter Pappy Smith and Harold's Club. One of those ideas came from a man named Raymond Pappy Smith. Pappy and his sons ran Harold's Club in Reno, and they quietly changed how casinos interacted with guests. Pappy did something radical for the time. He made the casino visible. No more back rooms. They put windows on the They put windows on the casino floor so people walking by could see inside. That seems obvious now, but at the time, gambling was supposed to be hidden, secretive, almost shameful. Inside the casino, dealers were encouraged to be friendly, to talk, to actually engage, to make guests feel welcome instead of intimidated. And Pappy would do something that shocked people. He'd walk the floor and occasionally double a guest's bet with house money. That wasn't generosity, that was psychology. What Pappy understood decades before loyalty programs existed was that casinos aren't just about odds, they're about how guests feel while they're playing. This is guest experience before the term ever existed. Now let's tackle the biggest myth in casino history. Most people believe Bugsy Siegel built modern Las Vegas. That's the movie version. The reality is Billy Wilkerson, a hotelier and publisher, designed the modern resort casino concept. Wilkerson envisioned a centralized casino layout. He didn't want clocks or windows in there because he wanted you to lose a sense of space and time. He actually put air conditioning in a casino. He had comfortable table layouts, high quality dining and entertainment alongside gaming. In other words, he thought like a hospitality operator. Bugsy Siegel didn't invent those ideas. He took control of the project. And here's where the lesson matters. The vision stayed, the discipline disappeared. Costs exploded, investor trust collapsed, controls vanished. The Flamingo Casino Hotel survived, but Bugsy didn't. The lesson here is timeless and very relevant to this course. Vision without discipline is just an expensive idea. Let me repeat that. Vision without discipline is just an expensive idea. Casinos don't fail because they lack creativity. They fail when controls, trust, and systems break down. Now enter Howard Hughes and some level of legitimacy. Now we jump forward to a very different kind of casino owner. This is Howard Hughes. He didn't gamble. He didn't shake hands. He was famously a germaphobe. He barely left his hotel room. And he may be the most important casino owner in history. Why? Because Hughes brought legitimacy. When Hughes invested in Las Vegas, banks became willing to lend. Corporations became willing to invest. Public markets became accessible. And if you don't know who Howard Hughes is, he was at one point the wealthiest man alive. This shift eventually led to the Corporate Gaming Act, which allowed publicly traded companies to own casinos. Revolutionary. Now that's all that owns them. That's the moment casinos stopped being personal empires and started becoming regulated financial institutions, all wrapped in a hospitality blanket. Without that shift, you don't get modern integrated resorts. Once casinos became regulated, financeable businesses, expansion was inevitable. You had Atlantic City, tribal gaming through the IGRA, riverboats, international markets, and then there was Macau. I actually worked in Macau. Macau didn't surpass Las Vegas because it's flashier and more luxurious. It surpassed Las Vegas in terms of revenues because the math worked. When I started out there was 3 casinos, and I believe they have 9 world-class, very profitable casino operations. And if you don't know where Macau is, it is north of Hong Kong. I actually lived in Hong Kong, and we would take a ferry boat into Macau where we would work at the casinos and then go back to Hong Kong for the evening, or that's where we stayed. Now there's a massive population nearby in Macau. That's one of the reasons that it surpassed Las Vegas in gaming revenue. It had a limited casino supply. There was a high volume of play, and there was extremely strong government oversight. Luxury helps, but access and supply and demand mattered more. That's not luck, that's market structure. So if you remember one thing from this lecture here, remember this. Casinos are not about luck. They are about systems managing uncertainty. Every modern casino relies on regulation, controls, capital discipline, behavioral understanding, and more. The lights, the sound, the games, that's the show. The business lives underneath. If you ever want to hear any of my stories from my time in the business, I've been in this business for 30 years. If you want to hear stories about Macau, about Las Vegas, about Indian gaming, about emerging markets, just give me a call. I'd love to tell you some of these things. Maybe we'll get into it as the semester goes forward. Now, next week, we're going to stop talking about where casinos came from, and we're going to start breaking down how they actually make money. Thanks.